Thank you. Welcome. Welcome to the Land Use and Livability Subcommittee meeting of September 30th, 2020. This is actually a special Land Use and Livability Subcommittee meeting. We're going to discuss what the city has been doing over the summer with our homelessness outreach plan. But prior to that, I believe we have call to order and then call to the public. Do we have any speakers for the public?
Chairwoman, it does not look as if they have signed on yet, so we may
Okay.
see them sign on later.
Okay, well, then we'll go ahead and start with the only topic we have today, which is the City of Phoenix Outreach Plan. I believe, Inger, you're going to kick it off? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, today, along with the directors Marshall Franklin, Cindy Stotler, and Spencer Self, we are here to update the subcommittee on the outreach efforts and feedback received from the neighborhood leaders, community members, service providers, and individuals experiencing homelessness on the Council's approved homelessness strategies plan, with the feedback regarding gaps, areas for refinement, and solutions that were identified as staff finalizes this plan for review in October by the full City Council. To begin, Human Services Director Marshall Franklin will provide an overview of the funding and services currently being provided by the City of Phoenix towards the homelessness support, and prevention efforts.
Thank you, Inger. Good morning, Chairwoman Stark and members of the subcommittee. There we go. Thank you, Inger. The number of unsheltered individuals experiencing homelessness in Phoenix increased by 18% in 2020. Currently, there are 2,380 unsheltered homeless individuals in Phoenix, and our city currently invests over $20 million annually. Provided for your reference is an overview by fund source for the $20 million I just referenced on the previous slide. This funding covers case management, rental subsidies, cleanup coordination, and navigation services, to name a few. As it relates to direct services, over $20 million, of the $20 million, over $4.1 million is dedicated to 9 community-based providers serving those who are experiencing homelessness. Each of these 9 agencies provides services in several areas, including shelter services for single men, women, and families, emergency shelter for our first responders when encountering families experiencing homelessness, navigation and wraparound services for individuals involved in the justice system, various rehousing interventions, and outreach and engagement. And with this $4.1 million, we serve over 5,400 clients. Of course, in March, the COVID-19 pandemic hit, and in order to assist with mitigating the impact of COVID-19 on individuals experiencing homelessness, on May 5th, the City Council approved over $9.6 million in C.A.R.E.S Act funding. Our strategy included focusing on vulnerable and at-risk individuals, which are our seniors, families, single women, single men, and youth. This over $9.6 million is providing services in the following areas: shelter services, again for single men, women, and families; emergency shelter, again for our first responders when encountering families experiencing homelessness; rapid rehousing, or hotel, which is what we are providing for vulnerable at-risks and seniors; rapid rehousing, which provides a short-term rent subsidy for up to 9 months, along with case management and wraparound services; and then permanent supportive housing, which is longer term, typically focused on those who have been chronically homeless or have multiple barriers. It also includes case management and wraparound services. Here are the providers and services associated with the COVID-19 C.A.R.E.S Act funding. It is our goal that under these funds, 555 individuals and 200 families will be served. I will now turn the presentation back over to Deputy City Manager Inger Erickson.
Thank you, Marshall, for the background on what is currently being done. As the mayor and council directed staff to provide multiple avenues for feedback on this plan, the staff completed 4 community-wide meetings, 1 meeting with service providers, 1 meeting, caught up here, 1 meeting with neighborhood leaders, 2 meetings at the Day Respite Center in the Convention Center, and various other meetings as requested. And you can see on the screen, there was a total of 22 different meetings. All meetings that were held in the community forums were bilingual. Many of them were in virtual. We did have a couple small in-person, and the Day Respite were in-person. We also had a Spanish only. And again, we wanted to make sure that we gave every opportunity possible for people to give feedback on the plan. Additionally, the online survey was online and available from July 29th to September 11th. You can see that there were many groups that we sent it out to, such as the Village Planning Committee, the Parks and Recreation Board and their various lists, and the Robust Neighborhood Services list, where we provide a lot of information for people to be aware of the opportunity to provide feedback. I also know that many of the council offices push the information out through newsletters as well as social media. Hard copy surveys were distributed to those who may not have access to a computer or the internet, and you can see there were various groups that helped us with that effort as well. Staff also developed an informational website that housed the plan, the survey, and information about what the city currently does to provide services for individuals experiencing homelessness. We had over 4,700 visits to the website, and through social media, over 68,000 people were reached. For the virtual meetings, we had over 700 individuals register and attend. They provided over 5,900 comments through the meetings and survey responses. Also, over 2,200 survey takers were participating in the process. Looks like my slide got stuck. While they're fixing that, we did also receive 50+ additional emails, and those are also being considered in our discussions for inclusion in the plan, where we did identify gaps and solutions from those comments and various emails. So, on the screen, you see the sections that make up the strategies to address the homelessness plan, including outreach and resources, mental health, workforce development, housing, cleanup, communication, policy, and neighborhoods. So what did we hear about the plan approved by the City Council in June of 2020? Marshall, Cindy, and Spencer will go into detail in the sections. It is important to note that the feedback we heard were from diverse perspectives. They also were sometimes counter to each other. So to begin, I will have Marshall start with the outreach and resources section of the plan.
Thank you again, Inger. The outreach and resources section of the plan is focused on connecting individuals experiencing homelessness to appropriate resources. And for this section, there were 2 primary areas that we received feedback on. The first is racial equity and the need to ensure all practices, policies, and interventions are developed through a racial equity lens, and unique and individualized resources and referrals are made available for populations including our veterans, people of color, families, LGBTQ, youth, and seniors. It is the notion that one size does not fit or serve all. We saw some of the highest levels of support for the mental health section, which seeks to help address mental health and substance abuse treatment for those experiencing homelessness. Comments ranged from the need for mental health professionals to serve as first responders when someone is experiencing a mental health crisis, increased funding for and better coordination among mental health providers. Specific to funding, it should be noted that the state of Arizona does have the responsibility for funding mental health services and not the City of Phoenix, And finally, more education for the public about mental health to destigmatize those who may experience mental illness. In the workforce development section, the needs identified included expanding access to services for individual job seekers facing barriers to employment, such as individuals who have been involved in the justice system, child support issues, limited knowledge of using professional social media for job searches, and several other areas, and identifying employer partners to hire individual job seekers who have completed training or obtained a certification or credential. I will now turn the presentation over to Housing Director Cindy Stotler.
Thank you, Marshall. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee. So the housing section covered the entire housing continuum, from eviction prevention to keep people from being homeless, to shelters, to transitional and bridge housing, permanent supportive housing, and finally, affordable housing. Because of these broad categories, we had over 800 comments on this section. So I'm going to review the common themes in these comments. Starting with eviction prevention, because of COVID, there were lots of comments about eviction moratoriums, mostly positive for the tenants experiencing loss of income. But a number of respondents were very concerned about small mom-and-pop landlords going bankrupt because of eviction moratoriums. Also, we had quite a bit of feedback about the eviction process, including the landlord's right to evict and the need to educate and assist tenants in the eviction process. We received a lot of feedback about the need to eliminate barriers to housing like criminal history and how we need to have a better reentry system for folks exiting from prison. Comments also expressed concern about the source of income discrimination, referring to landlords not accepting tenants with Section 8 or other subsidies for housing. There were many comments about the need for more shelters, many saying we need smaller, more specialized shelters for like populations, similar to home-based homeless youth housing featured on this slide. There were also many comments specifically about low-barrier shelters that allow folks in even if they are abusing substances, and they also allow you to bring in pets, partners, and belongings. Other comments expressed the need for day respite centers due to concerns with homeless persons' welfare during the day, especially in the heat. Comments also referred to this as an option to keep homeless persons from wandering through residential neighborhoods and city parks during the day. The location of additional shelters drew a lot of comments, many expressing the need for neighborhood or community input on the location of shelters. There were also lots of proposals for shelters in vacant industrial buildings, hotels, and shopping malls. Intermixed were many comments about the costs of shelters and services and the burden on taxpayers and how much support should be provided for homeless persons. Most feedback agreed that we need more affordable housing in Phoenix, and there were a lot of comments and questions about the goals and strategies included in the Housing Phoenix plan that was adopted in June. So we will expand on those strategies and goals in the Homeless Strategies report you will see later. Feedback on housing options were mixed, many saying that we should not add any density to existing neighborhoods. However, there were also many comments about creating tiny home villages, granny flats, and providing home ownership opportunities utilizing manufactured homes. Comments were generally negative on density, and most only recommended more multifamily housing in commercial areas near transportation. Last, we had many comments about Section 8 as a solution for homelessness and recommending incentives for landlords to encourage them to accept the homeless rapid rehousing and Section 8 tenants. But we also had a lot of comments about how there were too many Section 8 tenants in certain neighborhoods, that these tenants were not good neighbors, and that the program should not be expanded or incentivized. So we had lots of information on housing to consider and incorporate into our final report. And now I'll turn it over to Spencer for the next section.
Thank you, Cindy. Madam Chair and members of the subcommittee, at this point, I would like to take a step back from the Homeless Strategies Plan to talk about Phoenix C.A.R.E.S, our coordinated response system to work with neighborhoods and individuals experiencing homelessness to educate and provide solutions in the community. We've heard concerns about what the program actually is and should do from its inception. Phoenix C.A.R.E.S was created as we began seeing more and more of the visual impacts of homelessness on the community, primarily areas of litter and debris, usually related to encampments on private and public property, public and private property. Depending on the location, street transportation, public works, public transit, neighborhood services, and/or parks and recreation would be involved in the response. Additionally, depending on whether or not people experiencing homelessness were still at the location, human services, and if there were safety concerns, the police department were also key players. Before Phoenix C.A.R.E.S, our residents did not know who to contact and may have been bounced from one department to the next to get resolution. And some departments may not have been in the loop that should have been. Phoenix C.A.R.E.S helped ensure the public knew who to contact and that coordination would happen behind the scenes to get the situation cleaned up. One of the best added benefits of the program was the ability to ensure we were leading with services by sending CBI navigators to engage with those experiencing homelessness and provide connections to resources to help with issues people experiencing homelessness face. However, often residents believed this was the city's solution to homelessness as a whole, or that Phoenix C.A.R.E.S had the resources to address any instance where a community member saw someone experiencing homelessness on the street. The system was not designed as emergency response to issues related to homelessness. With only 9 navigator teams, it can take up to 72 hours for the navigators to respond, although the average is about half that due to the dedication and hard work of those teams. But that still means that unless someone is camping for an extended period in an area, they will likely be gone before CBI arrives. We wanted to provide this refresher on Phoenix C.A.R.E.S because it's relevant to the next few sections. The first of those is the cleanup section, which was primarily related to the efforts of those departments involved with Phoenix C.A.R.E.S, although it also includes scheduled cleanups not initiated by residents requested through the Phoenix C.A.R.E.S system. In this section, we saw comments related to better marketing for the Phoenix C.A.R.E.S program to make it easier to find information and outreach, particularly for residents near alleys or known encampment sites. More accessible metrics published for the Phoenix C.A.R.E.S program as a whole, and concerns about the resources for cleanup efforts, including recommendations to consider involving those who are experiencing homelessness in the cleanup efforts. In the policy section, which outlined city policy areas for recommended changes, we received mixed opinions about the code of conduct. If you recall, the Parks Department led the charge to establish rules of use of the parks for the purposes intended. While the parks should be available for the recreation of all residents, some parks have been heavily impacted by people using the parks for other uses, which leads to concerns about safety and accessibility for others. An example of this is all-day occupation of ramadas, preventing others from having an opportunity to enjoy that amenity. Street feeding. Many survey respondents did not understand why we might seek restrictions on providing food, a basic necessity for life, to people experiencing homelessness on the street. However, we have seen firsthand how destructive this simple and seemingly harmless act can be on those experiencing homelessness and the surrounding community. One example of this is near the Human Services campus. We have St. Vincent de Paul and the Andre House in that area who are providing meals to people on a daily basis. And around the holidays, many well-intentioned individuals, often faith-based institutions, stop by and park on the street to hand out food, clothing, tents, and other items. The result is quite a bit of litter and debris, as many items are discarded, leaving the city and private property owners responsible for the mess to clean up. But perhaps more importantly, it can wreak havoc on those experiencing homelessness. I remember talking to some of the folks at the Human Services campus who described one year when someone decided to hand out alcohol to the homeless. They were thinking, hey, it's the holidays, everyone should be able to celebrate. But an ambulance had to be called because at least one individual had to be treated for alcohol poisoning. Another time, someone stopped to hand out cash. That didn't end well either. Somewhat related, it can also end poorly when the charitable giver does not have enough of a highly desirable item to give to everyone. It can lead to fights and people getting hurt. These incidents were part of the reason the Healthy Giving Council, a collaboration between nonprofits, faith-based institutions, and government agencies led by Jerome Parker, was formed. Also, the canal banks were an item that received comments. Some responders did not understand why we would be concerned about encampments along the canal banks, citing the lack of other places provided for homeless individuals. And it's a difficult topic because there was a significant investment in, say, the Grand Canalscape that was not intended to serve as a place for encampments. This section was an area where we heard quite a few comments and concerns about criminalization as well. Next, we have the communication section. In this section, we saw comments related to promoting an increase in transparency related to programming and results and metrics data, including an interest in dashboards available to the public. And also, we heard some comments from folks who were saying the city should tout our own successes in the area of homelessness better as well. Next, we have the neighborhood section. While this section did not garner the most comments, it was one that was widely mentioned as needing more discussion, explanation, attention, and city investment. It should be noted there were comments to suggest fulfilling other sections of the plan will help reduce homelessness overall, which will thereby support neighborhoods, which is a key point that perhaps wasn't indicated strongly enough in the plan, that this section largely treats symptoms but is not a cure. Overall, the comments were very diverse. We heard concerns about criminalization, particularly around the proposed use of illegal dumping cameras in alleys. But we also saw support for enforcement of the laws being violated, such as trespassing, illegal drug and alcohol use, and littering/illegal dumping. On one hand, we heard less emphasis on enforcement, more focus on solving the core issues of housing the homeless. But on the other hand, we heard increasing policing is the only thing that works. Trespassing, littering, and camping must be policed. Additionally, we heard an emphasis on how to best engage with service-resistant individuals. Court interventions, including the MESA model, were referenced, which of course the MESA model was modeled after the City of Phoenix's own innovative collaboration between the municipal court, the prosecutor's office, and the public defender's office to provide specialty courts such as the Veterans Court and Behavioral Health Court that focus on addressing root underlying issues. As we understand it, the City of Mesa is also using some of their COVID funds to temporarily house some of the people who are going through their court process who would otherwise be homeless. There were a variety of comments, mostly supportive within this section, of infrastructure investments to alleviate key issues like the lack of accessible restrooms, heat respite centers, and public showers. However, they were not always supportive. We had comments such as, no public restrooms, please. They are meeting places for crimes to occur, as well as there's got to be a place that a person can use a bathroom in private. We also heard comments about the reference to the possible expansion of the gated alley program pilot included in the plan. Most were supportive, such as not only expand the gated alley program, but fund all qualifying alleys. But there were some that were opposed. The gated alley program furthers the us versus them mentality and has the potential to decrease the sympathy that those experiencing homelessness deserve. Overall, we had quite a bit of interest from the neighborhoods in being involved, and not just in the creation of the plan, but of ongoing involvement in being part of the implementation process. They wanted to know how they can help and how they can keep informed about what we are doing to address the issues that they are facing. Although I will say we had some neighborhoods who took some offense to the language about a call to action for neighborhoods. There's a lot of neighborhoods that are very well engaged and are very active in resolutions for the issues they're facing. And so that's an area that we also will be looking to clarify if it remains within the plan. And next, I'll hand it back over to Inger for the final slide.
Thank you, Spencer, Cindy, and Marshall, and the other members of the team. In all, there were 14 departments that are working to develop the homelessness strategies plan that will help us make Phoenix a better place to live for everyone. For our next steps, staff is adding to the plan additional strategies that we've heard through the multiple meetings and conversations that we've had with the community. incorporating feedback into existing strategies, and adding a matrix that will help us stay on track as we move forward in this plan and implementation. The plan will be back to the mayor and city council on October 27th. We have received additional emails in the past several days that we will continue to incorporate into our plan as it is appropriate. And if there are additional comments that need to be provided to us, on the screen you see an individual's email, elizabeth.duncan@phoenix.gov. That certainly we can take a few more comments if there are additional comments. And we are planning to be back to the council on October 27th, so those comments need to come in quickly. And with that, Chairwoman Stark and subcommittee members, this concludes our presentation on where we were with the outreach efforts for the plan, and we'd take any questions or answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you, Inger. I appreciate it. We actually have some public comment on this issue, and so I think I would like to take the comments first and then hear from the council. Is that okay? Thank you. So our first speaker is Craig Tripkin. Craig? Do we have Craig?
Chairwoman, it looks like he's on. He may be muted.
Okay.
Mr. Tripkin, are you on the call? Chairwoman, we may have to come back to him.
Okay. Then let's move on to Bill Moreland.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Bill Moreland. I'm a member of the Madison Pioneers Coalition, a group of neighbors and businesses down in the area right near the Human Services campus where so many of the services are provided. So first I want to thank the city again for everything you are doing. It does seem like some of the comments people have been making have been incorporated into your ideas moving forward, which we certainly appreciate. But we do have a group of the neighbors have continued to get together, and we do have a couple of specific things that we feel like we're not necessarily adequately addressed in what the plan has been up until now. So I submitted a comment that listed 5 specific things. I won't go great into depth on all of them because you can read them. So, but one that I do want to really highlight is 2 that I really want to highlight in my short amount of time. One is the city really needs to make the commitment to having these smaller specialized facilities. Studies have shown that the giant facilities don't provide the best services to the clients and also can hurt the neighborhoods around them. So smaller specialized facilities, especially if they could be done in conjunction with something else like job training locations or services for seniors, would actually provide much better support to the people experiencing homelessness and also lessen the impact on the neighborhoods around them. So, and then also we need some kind of oversight for all of these facilities. Restaurants get inspected, bars have to have rules about what they do to the neighborhoods around them. As far as I can figure out, there is no one who has any kind of responsibility for making sure that the service providers, as they try to do their good works, but to make sure that they're not having a negative effect on the neighborhoods and the people around them. So thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bill. Our next speaker, Angela. Hello, Angela. How are you?
Hi, Deb.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I sure can.
Deb, thank you. Let me get my notes here. Thank you for allowing us to speak at the meeting here, and it's good to hear what everyone's doing. We did meet with Inger and Spencer and Tamara. I think the one thing that we want to really push is that the neighborhoods want to have a seat at the table when this goes on before it gets laid out. We'd like to be a neighborhood seat as far as, you know, when the vendors and the providers, the city council, the directors that are putting this together, we think we have a lot of positive input and another view that needs to be involved in it that isn't seen from anyone else except people that are living in the neighborhoods and having businesses there. And we agree with what they've talked about with the low barrier shelter someplace. We think they need to have one in a separate location that is for people that are, you know, what they want to, resistant to go into the shelters or to take any other type of help. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. Definitely the smaller shelters we think are the way to go. We've all, you know, gone into this and done a lot of research. We've talked with other groups that are working on helping with homelessness. And there's just so many good ideas with some of these groups that haven't been around as long, but they're a little more maybe forward thinking. And, you know, as far as the city plans, it's our understanding that HSC is the expansion, zoning expansion is part of that. And we are, you know, against that completely, of any kind of expansion. So we hope that is, and would like to have some meetings in person if possible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alicia McKinley next.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay, thank you so much. My concerns are, well, Angela spoke on it, was the neighborhood seating, but the smaller shelters and the camping areas that when they come out to do their cleaning, and it's just like not enough notification for the people, and then the cleaning, for as the gentleman spoke about cleaning the areas, have more people cleaning, you know, have more people to be able to clean. But we definitely agree with the smaller shelters, with getting, you know, more services and more um, participants in the smaller shelters, because that's what's needed for the seniors and the other people. So that so much of the activities are not around in the business areas. So because you have a lot of things going on in the business areas where uh, you know it's kind of something to be did about it. So we want to just stress that, and also the feeding for the vendors. We would like to have like the neighborhood seat, you know, so we can all know what's going on, and they don't just randomly do something on their own, and then cause more, you know, more issues. But the budget is too small, and we want to speak on that. So I believe that's the only thing that I have. Yeah, that's it for me. Thank you so much. And have a
Well,
blessed
thank
day.
you. Thank you. Next speaker is Elizabeth Venerable. Elizabeth, hi.
I lost my earbuds. I wanted to say that I also believe that the budget is not sufficient. You have other metropolitan areas which are comparable in size, spending like 50 million, and Phoenix is coming nowhere close to that. And it, to me, it's not a matter of small shelters versus large shelters. It's a matter of overall capacity. And if we don't have the capacity to house people, again, I come back to the enforcement. It's just unconstitutional. My favorite part of this plan was when you said we should ask the federal government to see why they can't enforce it. And my assumed answer is that federal government would say that it's opposed to federal law to enforce these laws, especially on federal land. I am also concerned about the difference. How are you going to differentiate between feeding and a picnic in a park? I think also there are many First Amendment issues that go along with feeding, and also I believe it's also cruel and unusual punishment to criminalize people for giving out food. I further believe that we need to engage people who are homeless more in the process, and incorporate them into these programs, as opposed to either having them only as beneficiaries or only as targets of enforcement. One thing that's been suggested is that for the cleanups, the people could participate themselves, but definitely there needs to be notice. There needs to be no seizure and destruction of property, which there has been a lot of seizure and destruction of property. And there needs to be no violations of constitutional rights when you go about these things. So I know that this isn't the most popular topic, but I hope that you will consider it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Ann Ender. Hello, Ann.
Good morning. Thank you, Councilwoman Stark and committee members. I just wanted to thank my fellow, in addition to staff, I wanted to thank my fellow neighborhood leaders for an exhaustive and professional research that they've done that resulted in these recommendations. I also support specialized facilities able to serve specific needs of the homeless, such as mental illness and substance abuse, and therefore I also support Councilman DeCiccio and Nowakowski's proposal to purchase St. Luke's Hospital. I think that facility can provide medical attention, substance abuse rehabilitation, mental illness, ongoing therapy. I think there's a multitude. But before we can even get there, we have to do something to address the 80% of the homeless population that refuses help. And I don't know how you do that other than to put enforcement in place, whether it's 5 visits to the ER and then you go to these facilities, or some other type of enforcement that does not include the Phoenix Police Department. I don't think any of these will work. So I do ask you to look at how you integrate those types of suggestions and solutions into this plan. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Lisa Glow.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Good morning, Madam Chairman, committee members. Thank you for your hard work on this plan, and we appreciate staff's efforts. We've been in a homeless and housing crisis for a decade, and Maricopa County has only gotten worse every year with our unsheltered homeless numbers. And that was before the pandemic, and now we're seeing projections that homelessness could rise by up to 30% in Arizona. National projections are up to 40%. So what my takeaway is we need to be ready to do all we can now to shore up our infrastructure with both more shelter and more housing, and we need to act quickly to address this crisis. We need to think strategically about how to make that happen. And I guess the thing I'm asking all of the council members to consider is setting aside some of the C.A.R.E.S Act dollars for some of these permanent solutions that agencies like C.A.S and others are coming up with. And we will see more senior homelessness. We will see more working poor becoming homeless. So we need those workforce type of housing and shelter solutions. And we will continue to see more people on fixed incomes and also on disability income, because that's a huge percentage of the people that we serve. So 3 areas we think need to be emphasized in the plan: new models of shelter and housing, including for special populations. Secondly, greater flexibility with housing rental assistance, including support for those who need a small hand up and that rapid rehousing dollars cannot support. C.A.S has built a model program for this already for 5 years, and thank goodness we had revenues available when the pandemic hit because we could use that flexible assistance. And then the specialized services for the many varied populations who come into homelessness. Craig Tripkin, by the way, has texted me. He's had trouble getting onto the call, so you may not be able to reach him.
Okay.
So, but he may be listening, but having some trouble getting in. So those are our big takeaways. We're in a crisis, and we need to be strategic and include the C.A.R.E.S Act funding in those solutions. Thank you.
Thank you. Shall we try Craig one more time? Craig? Okay. And I understand that Marcus is not on the line. I have a couple people who have texted me who wanted to speak. Can we somehow connect them? The first would be Jeff Spellman.
Chairwoman will work with IT on that. Just a second. Mr. Spellman, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
We can hear you, Jeff.
Very good. Thank you so much, Chairwoman Stark. I really appreciate it. I did sign up to speak, so I'm not sure why I didn't get the link for it, and I didn't notice it until this morning. But thank you very much, yourself and other members of our City Council. You know, many of the neighborhoods, the Violence Impact Project Coalition has been working with downtown neighborhoods, neighborhoods in the East Phoenix, as well as far in our Sunny Slope. And we've all come to common consensus about what the issues are and what some of the solutions are. I think you've heard a lot of them already commented today. I actually think the staff did a really good job of identifying common themes that are important to all of us. What we're missing from the plan are strategies. And I know we're moving forward with identifying some of those. And you've gotten our letters, our consistent letters with the 5 things that we're recommending. Those are things like the MESA model, the oversight committee to regulate the service providers, involve neighborhoods in the plan, commit to smaller specialized facilities, and lastly, a low barrier shelter. We're really hoping that the council today will provide this kind of direction to staff and that the neighborhoods will be involved as they continue to flush this out and come up with these strategies over the next month. We don't want to be surprised with what's in the plan come October 27th, and that would be our best. Really appreciate your work on this and look forward to working with council and also with staff as they further develop this plan. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairwoman.
Yes.
So Mary Obrashta is also says she also signed up to speak, and that she wasn't called upon.
Who was it?
Mary Obrashta.
Oh, I think she's in call to public. That may be some of the confusion. I think some names are under call to public, but they probably want to talk on this. So why don't we turn to our call to the public? But I also have another speaker, Ava Alivas, wants to speak. If we can get her on.
She
Hello?
should be on, Chairwoman.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for all of your service. I appreciate it. I do want to talk quickly because I want to make sure I get my little 2 minutes in. And my primary focus is going to be on the neighborhood strategy. I truly believe that there are many people and millions of dollars for homeless services. So that is something that I'm not going to focus on, although I am very much in support of smaller facilities, some very focused programming, but I want to talk about the neighborhood strategy. So as I looked at it on your strategy number 8, I really felt that the survey itself did not include feedback from the residents and neighborhoods as I thought it should have. This is of course my opinion, but I do think that even the council recognized that because they actually directed staff to go back there or asked staff to do a meeting that was specifically for neighborhood leaders. I also felt that that there needs to be some real commitment from the city for this Phoenix C.A.R.E.S program. The Phoenix C.A.R.E.S program is a program that the city seems to be very proud of, but to be quite honest, in the community, it is mediocre at best. We need it to be funded at a level that can respond timely to the needs of residents. And I also feel that, you need to stop just really shoving this gated alley program down the throat of residents. This is not a new idea. There is nothing in this plan that brings any new ideas to how we can help solve the neighborhood impact. So that is just one option for some neighborhoods who opt in, but there are many neighborhoods who don't want their alleys closed. The idea of illegal dumping cameras, you know, again, when neighborhoods call the police, they are not the priority. So again, I think there should be some real metrics for what is the service to neighborhoods, what is the service to the homeless, and I think that we need to create a system that can be dropped in any city council district proudly, instead of a facility or a place that everybody's battling to not have in their district. Thank you.
Thank you. I have next, should we go, do you think call to public is all on this issue? Do you have that list, Matt?
Chairwoman, I am not sure, but I imagine that it could be, yes.
Then why don't we start with Mary Lou? Since the Vice Mayor mentioned she wanted to speak on this issue. So Mary Lou?
Okay,
Thank
I guess you can hear me because my
Yes, we
little
can.
red thing, thank you. I'm in favor of most of the recommendations that have been made up to this point, but what I'm not in favor of right now is adopting the Mesa model, at least until an independent oversight committee is formed that consists of both city staff and neighborhood stakeholders. This committee should be given the authority to develop and implement a plan that does not discriminate against any one neighborhood. Neighborhood leaders need to be involved, the public needs to be involved, because this is not a decision that can be made with one-sided input. What is in place, we clearly all know does not work. But with roundtable discussions, ideas being thrown out, arguments, cussing and swearing, whatever it takes, I wholeheartedly believe a plan can be developed that will work. Other cities the size of Phoenix have successfully accomplished this, and I personally think we're way smarter than many of them. So that being said, I do believe that once a roundtable panel is put together, that we can come up with a much better plan than what is in place and what has been proposed. But I certainly also appreciate the work of city staff on this because it's given us a start and someplace to go from. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, on call to the public, Summer Bagley. Summer, are you here on this issue?
Chairwoman, I think that Lisa Glow is the only other member of Call to the Public online right now.
Okay, and I also got a text that Sheila Harris would like to speak. Is Sheila there? I'm getting lots of texts. Do we see Sheila?
You should be on, Chairwoman.
Here I am. Hi.
Hi. Hi.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you. Yes, I also did not receive my information back that I was signed into the meeting, although I did do that yesterday. So
okay,
perhaps a little glitch. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to speak, Councilwoman Stark and other members of the committee, as well as city staff. I want to speak to one specific issue, and that is eviction prevention. I noticed that is in the plan, and we've had discussions about that as I co-chair the Phoenix Community Alliance Committee on Social and Housing Advancement, and city staff has worked with us on this effort, and we want to support them because our perspective, the best way to end homelessness is for it to never begin. And eviction prevention is one way to do that. However, we do need additional supportive housing units as well as affordable housing units in our community, and really want to work with the city to make sure that that happens. The subcommittee of the Phoenix Community Alliance, or the committee of this Community Alliance on Housing and Social and Housing Advancement, will be meeting next Monday, and we'll make sure that we put this item on the agenda so people can provide their comments before your deadline that it goes to the council. And I want to thank you for your support and I've looked at this issue from both a neighborhood perspective, as I was the first director of Phoenix Community Alliance. You heard from earlier, Will Levis is the current director, and I also was at Human Services Campus where I spoke with Spencer about the holiday giving incident of the alcohol. And people thinking that they're doing something really good, and it turns out rather tragic. So I think we're working on this much better than I've seen in many years. We still have a long way to go, but I want to let you know that you have assistance from us at our committee that's working on housing, homelessness in our community. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Ash, are you online? From Andre House?
I do not believe he is online, Chairwoman.
Okay. And Joel Copeland?
He is also not online.
And just two more people. John Westerdale?
He is online, Chairwoman.
Okay.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Very good. Thank you. Yes, my name is John Westerdale. I'm a property owner in the Capitol Mall District. I've submitted plans or comments on the homelessness plan. I was in a meeting with Inger Erickson and Spencer Self, and we've worked as a neighborhood with the Madison Pioneers Coalition. We've come up with quite a few ideas on how to solve this problem or to address homelessness. And I think other folks from our group have come up with kind of like a 5-point plan about adopting the MESO model for addressing homelessness, creating an independent oversight organization with authority over service providers, formally involving neighborhoods in creating a plan, prioritizing smaller and specialized facilities to serve people experiencing homelessness, and is creating a low barrier shelter that meets the requirements of the Ninth Circuit Court without hurting neighborhoods. And I really want to emphasize that this can't be something where these large shelters built. For instance, the HSC rezoning petition that's coming up. You can't have 1,000-person shelter that you dump into a neighborhood and destroy the neighborhood in the process. And it's not fair for the Capitol Mall District. It wouldn't be fair for other neighborhoods as well. So it's important that the city really help the homeless and focus on helping them, but also you've got to have metrics and be able to quantify the health and safety that exists in neighborhoods when new shelters are coming on board. So again, it's great to see the work the city's done on this so far. So thank you.
Thank you. And let's try Craig Kripken one more time. He just texted me and said, I think he's on. Craig?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I apologize. That was an operator error. I just want to, Lisa covered a lot of what I think Cass would like to see out of the homeless plan. I just want to emphasize that it's important that we develop new models of shelter. A number of people have talked about it, but one size fits all doesn't really work for what we're doing. I guess the bottom line is we've got a crisis, and what we're doing right now hasn't worked. And I saw in the recommendations that policy was ranked at 75% and other things were ranked higher. We've got some policies, I think, that should be addressed as we go. One of them is we need flexibility of housing assistance. We have found that if CAS can, when we can get money for housing and services associated with housing and fewer restrictions on how we do that housing, we have found we are more successful, period. And so raising some of the restrictions, some of which come through HUD, is an important piece of this. specialized services for specialized individuals. And I'll jump, this is a really important plan. I think this is probably the overriding point I'd make is we've got a lot of policy things that are not working for us, have not worked, and we can see that. We're gonna have a lot of newly COVID casualties associated with homelessness, and we need to figure out ways of changing some existing policies to address that. And there are some specifics, but I won't waste your time, not waste your time. I won't spend your time going into it too much, but I think it's really important that we continue to push the envelope on how we're doing things and have different approaches for different people. Hotel Haven, Project Haven has taught us an awful lot of new things that we can do. I'm out of time, and I will leave it at that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I have one last speaker, Ian Francis. Ian?
Yes, I'm here. Hey, good morning,
Okay.
everybody. Can you hear me?
Go. Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry for the late start here. I just got connected. So I'm not sure what the folks said prior to me. I heard John Westerdale was the first one. I'm also part of the Madison Pioneers Coalition, business owner resident. We've been meeting with a lot of city representatives down at my loft at 9th Avenue in Madison. We've also been trying to come up with alternative solutions to try and help out both what's happening on the streets and the local communities. I think this is one of the toughest projects that the city has had to face in the last couple of years. There's no black and white answer. There's a lot of gray areas. It's multifaceted, as everybody knows. The couple of points I do want to make is that after our latest meeting a few days ago with a lot of the neighborhood representatives, one of the main factors is that we need to have a low barrier shelter, if that's what we're going to proceed with, in an area that's not going to affect residents or business owners. So for example, the low barrier shelter as it sits now is across the street in the county owned lots. We need to move that to an area that's not going to affect business owners and residents from a health and safety perspective. The other point I want to, I guess, make a big one is we need to separate this mega shelter into smaller, more manageable facilities to address the individual problems. One of the nearby St. Luke's Hospital was brought up as an alternative solution for people with mental challenges and addiction challenges. That might be a good option for a start, not putting everybody over there, but putting people that need health service related services into that facility. Most importantly, though, we are opposed to having this mega shelter being expanded in the downtown Phoenix area. As you know, there's a lot of negative repercussions that are happening now and will in the future. It's just going to amplify that. So thanks, everybody, and that's all.
Thank you. That concludes all the speakers. Now we'll turn to our subcommittee members for any comments. Vice Mayor?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. So first of all, I want to thank Inger for all of your hard work on this and all of the staff for doing this. I know that, you know, a few weeks ago or a week ago, days are blending together. You went out with some of my constituents and some of the constituents of Councilwoman Stark and went out in the neighborhood. So I am very thankful for you taking the time and listening to our constituents about some of the needs in the district. So I really appreciate that. And I don't want to repeat everything that everyone has said, but I definitely agree that we need to take community input as we're making this happen. I think it would be key for the next 30 days. I know that we're bringing this back to council on October 27th, so I think it would be a great idea on getting some of the community members together with us to making sure that they're part of the process and part of the decisions that are going to be made and that are going to be presented to council in the next couple of weeks. I also agree that with the neighborhood leaders who are asking for more community involvement in this plan, I believe we should establish an ad hoc committee similar to the one chaired by Councilwoman Williams and Councilmember Garcia to help create a plan to address homelessness in our city that takes into account the concerns for our service providers, our residents and neighborhood leaders, and our professional expertise from the city staff. So I think that's like the long-term plan is like how do we establish that? But in the short-term plan, I would love for you, Inger, to really figure out like a small group of folks that you will be talking to as you're revising some of the stuff in the plan. The other thing is, I think we need more transparency and accountability for the organizations that receive city contracts or money to provide services to those experiencing homelessness. I agree with neighborhood leaders that there should be more oversight, and I think the city should establish the oversight committee again. I mean, I just keep harping on that, but I just think that's something that's incredibly important. And then also in the workforce development strategies, there is a call for the creation of a position to serve as a liaison between employers and those looking for work. I would like to expand this call to include an additional position that focuses exclusively on the city of Phoenix as an employer by balancing our efforts on both the public and private sector. I believe that we can coordinate with local organizations who work with those experiencing homelessness to create a robust jobs pipeline. I know that Lori Bays and her team in Human Resources has been working with our office, the Water Services Department, and both the Phoenix Rescue Mission and St. Joseph the Worker on a similar strategy. I know that here at the city, we have tons of open positions. We've had many different discussions about different things about how we need to hire more folks. And I think that the city can be an asset on helping a lot of these folks getting jobs. So I think that is incredibly important for us to be able to do that. I agree. I also agree with the Mesa model. We should figure out what are the pieces of the Mesa model that we're probably already doing here in Phoenix. I know that we had a meeting in the past with the neighbors talking a little bit about that. We should figure out a way, how is it that we can coordinate better with the courts here in Phoenix to making sure that through the court we can help people get into services as well. So I think there are different things that we could be doing, but I think the first things first is figuring out a way, how do we get a group of people from the community to be part of putting the plan together that will be presented on October 27th. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Councilman Garcia, do you want to speak?
Thank you.
I saw you turn your camera on.
Yeah, that's the key. That's like raising my hand.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Yeah, I want to just have a couple of comments and thank staff for going through this process. Our office, we were the only ones to vote against the plan, and the big reason why we voted against it is we felt that a lot of these contributions needed to happen beforehand. So I'm glad they're happening now. We're going to be able to incorporate these. And so as I make my comments, I think the theme's going to be how are we going to incorporate these into the broader plan? I think that's what we all want to know. And also, how are we going to continue the planning, whether it's an ad hoc committee or other things? How do we make sure that this has measurables, is working, and how we're moving forward? Some of the key themes from the feedback that we heard that we liked is definitely affordable housing and creating more housing and going with housing first. Some of our comments when the initial plan came was that we wish it actually incorporated a little bit more values or priorities that we can always go back to pull the plan towards those values or priorities. And I think housing first and incorporating affordable housing into this is very important. So I'm glad Cindy's here, and I know she's coming out with her plans. And so I think we need to make sure that these two stay together. The mental health and substance abuse, more resources for that, I think is something we heard, we've known, and something we should push forward. To not criminalize or those experiencing homelessness, I think is very important, and we heard the theme. So I think it's important to look at the plan where there's places that people are being criminalized or we're over enforcing and make those shifts. So I would want to know from staff, where are we going to make shifts in the plan that already criminalized, since we're here and we don't want criminalization. I think we also heard a theme, and I think it's something that's either because of COVID or just maybe we're paying more attention now, but the specific populations and creating plans for different populations of folks is something that was definitely in our face, particularly youth, seniors. I think we are missing a little bit more of LGBTQ and race and different segments, but I do think that being able to come up with different plans for folks who are experiencing homelessness in different ways is going to be important. I think I don't often disagree with the vice mayor, but I do want to highlight that I think oversight for the nonprofits that are already working so much and are so underfunded seems like a reach. I think where we can make this help, where we can support them and at the same time make sure that the people are assured that they're doing what they say they're doing, is maybe having more metrics, more ways of measuring impact in different ways. But having talked to Lisa and Craig yesterday, the folks at Andre House, and just the amazing work that they're doing, to think that we're going to set up a group of community folks that are going to go micromanage or look at what they're doing seems excessive. And I'd rather spend resources and the headspace of those community folks in coming up with solutions and in working alongside of them, rather than kind of policing what those nonprofits are doing, which I think they're already doing a lot with little. So yeah, I think that metrics piece is important. I know we don't have the time now. Eva Oliva said some interesting things. I would want to just kind of hear from her perspective where we went wrong in connecting with community. And also I think she brings a perspective that, you know, a lot of the louder voices we're hearing is some of the business and folks that have interest in the area, and we're not able to hear a lot from the communities that are around there, that live there, that have actually been, a lot of them have learned to live with the campus for 20, 30 years. And so I think incorporating their voices a little more would be important. Also, speaking to Craig and Lisa, the Project Haven sounds like it went really well. I would love to hear a little bit of expansion of what and how that's been working. I know that's a lot of what folks are saying right now with like the smaller shelters, specialized shelters, is what Project Haven is. And so I would want them to explain a little bit more of what that is. And yeah, I mean, overall, I think there's a lot of work. I think we shouldn't try to react to this or even pretend that we're going to fix it with one plan. It's something that we need to be committed to, figure out new ways of funding and properly funding the issue, and continue to incorporate all these voices to come together and help out. And I do know, and I recognize, I heard the word crisis. I think we're already in a crisis, but evictions are coming in December. Having seen some reports that came out of Houston, who's already evicting people, it breaks my heart to think that we're literally going to go into that in a couple of months, and knowing that if our population's already grown 20%, it might double or triple by the beginning of next year. So we should take this as the crisis that it is and keep working on it. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Councilwoman Williams.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank staff for the work they did on this, for all the efforts they put in, and for all the people that participated. I think it's still beginning. I don't think we've got a handle on this at all. I talked to Lisa and Greg yesterday in depth about what the programs they are providing to the community right now in a smaller fashion outside of C.A.R.E.S, which have great results. And I know now that we have smaller agencies working on hotels all around the city that really provide good services in a protected area. But I think what we need to do, having experimented with single homeless senior women when I was mayor, it takes a lot of case management, and I don't think we have allocated nearly enough for case management. These people need a lot of guidance and support to get their life back in order. It's not as easy as just putting them in a room, and I think people need to recognize that. I would really like to see us put more emphasis on case management so that the areas where we've been very successful, we've had case managers that have helped people get back on their feet, get the services they need, build the confidence, and actually they now working, have jobs, and have moved out and have their own place. And I think that's the model we need to really help follow. The C.A.R.E.S Act always worries me because in the northern area, we're getting a few shelters. Well, they're not big shelters, they're small, more hotels. But we have so many individual homeless people. And I know I've worked with Judge Taylor on what is now called the Mesa model, which actually began in Phoenix. And I think it's important that we invest in that, refine it, because we have a very good, well-known mental health and I'm having a total space, and drug court. And both of those have been very successful. And they, in lieu of going to jail, if you attend the services as remanded, there's no jail time, there's nothing on the record. And I'm wondering if we couldn't put more money in to provide longer treatment going through those court systems, because it's very beneficial. Obviously, if other cities have adopted them, Mesa has, Peoria has. I think it's something that we should continue to emphasize and really build upon. I think that's very important that we do. But I'd really like to see us find a way to contact some of the single people that are in our alleys, running around on the streets, eating out of the restaurant garbage bins, a way to help them. And where I saw educate the neighbors, that scares me to death. I would never think of going out and stopping somebody in the alley or on the street, knowing they're homeless, and tell them they have to go get services and live, because it has been what I have heard from experience. They're not so much interested in getting help. It's an independent lifestyle they prefer. So changing their mind on that is something I think is very important we need to get involved in. And educating our officers and services in this area, I think is important. So that's my few comments. It took a long time. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I also want to thank staff. They've done a lot of work, and they really seem to be reaching out to our neighborhoods and to various nonprofits, and I appreciate the work they've done. I do have just one question. Part of the discussion we've had as a council is this is a regional issue. And so have you had a chance to talk to some of the surrounding cities, maybe share our plan with them? I don't know if that's Inger or who wants to answer.
Chairwoman Stark and members of the subcommittee, we have been on various groups with the county and with the state, and many of those groups have individuals from other cities in those groups as well. So there has been some communication. You know, we have been working steadily to make sure that we are revising and refining the plan based on the comments we've heard. And so we can spend a little bit more time, I think, doing that as well. But we have interacted with cities through those various groups that are arranged by the state and also the county.
Great. Well, we don't have this as an action item today, but I think you heard a lot of great comments from the subcommittee, and hopefully you'll continue to refine and maybe if the council wants to meet individually with the team, that might be helpful as well to look at some refinement of some of the ideas. I really appreciate, again, everything you guys have done. I know it's been a long summer, been a hot summer, but you certainly have been active in reaching out to people, and I appreciate that. I don't think we have any other items. Do we have call to the public? Anyone we missed?
Let me check, Chairwoman, just a second.
Okay. I haven't gotten any texts lately, so I think we got everybody, I hope.
And Chairwoman, this is Inger. If I could make one correction to a slide that we had.
Oh, sure.
The email address is Liz, L-I-Z without the A, but it is also on our website, and so it is
Okay.
correct on the website. So I just want to make sure I said that in case people were trying to send comments. If they get a bounce back, take the A out between Liz Beth, and it is Liz Beth, not Liz A Beth.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And we do not have any other members of the public wishing to speak online.
Okay, well, thank you so much. I will call for adjournment. Thank you.